Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. Stand out, don't fit in. Today I am delighted to be speaking with Nikos Mavrakis. Nico, you grew up in Greece and you moved to the United States at the age of 17 to study. And since then you obtained 3 degrees, a bachelor's and a master's in computer engineering, and then MBA in technology management. You have worked in corporate America, United States government, and the tech startup world. You are an investor in multiple asset classes, and you are passionate about helping people improve their mindset and get on a path towards achieving their biggest dreams. So, Nico, welcome to the show. I am very excited to speak with you today.
Thank you, Agi. So am I, and thank you very much for this very nice introduction.
It's my pleasure. Nico, I want to start with asking you to give us a key defining moment in your life's journey, especially related to your personal development.
Okay. So let me first define self-development. Let me tell you what self-development means to me. So self-development is when somebody goes out on their own to try to obtain information and knowledge, right? So there's no curriculum given to them. So for example, when you go to a university, like me, I want to become an engineer, they give you a curriculum of so many courses. There may be some changes you can make, but pretty much for 4 or 5 years, there's all these courses that you have to take to get a degree, right? Mm-hmm. And most of us that have gone through this process will probably say that a lot of the courses that we took were not specifically related to the subject that we wanted to study, right? So for example, I'm an engineer. I was doing all kinds of things like chemistry and history and even gym in my school. It was a requirement. So what happened was, like you said, I did 3 degrees. I got 3 degrees. And after college, I think I did not open a book for at least 4 years. Mm-hmm. I just didn't want to see books anymore because it wasn't a pleasant experience. I was reading stuff that I wasn't necessarily loving, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened with me is that I reached a time in my life that I really wanted to get some answers. And that's when I started to specifically target areas that I wanted to read about. And, I was always a curious person. I really liked human behavior. So I got passionate about psychology, then about leadership, entrepreneurship, finance and financial freedom. And I was really, first of all, intrigued by the little profound pieces of knowledge that I was learning from these books. And then also how, when you apply this knowledge, how much faster it can take you to where you want to go. And in addition to that, I also had mentors and coaches that really helped me go forward in my life. So, even reaching out to a coach or a mentor, I consider that part of my self-education, right? Like I'm reaching out to somebody to get a specific type of guidance or mentorship or even training. And that's when it all began.
So were there any, let's say, milestone moment where you think that things changed rapidly after then, during that journey?
A few events that I can think of. Okay. One is, you grew up thinking that the people that do something big in life are either lucky or they're super talented, or maybe, somebody gave them a lot of money and they were able to start a business. Like that's how we're brought up to believe, right? That the very few can do these things. So by taking action and doing things that I never thought were possible, I was able to prove to myself that that's not true. So a big example is running a marathon. Like I ran my first marathon in my late 30s, and it was something, and I'm not a runner, right? So it was something that was very, very hard to do. And especially when I started training, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. But then, I put in my mind, I went ahead, I did the training in only 6 months. And then I went and I completed a marathon. So that kind of proves to you that, you can really do anything you like. As long as you stay committed and you believe that you can do it, mm-hmm. you will overcome any obstacle that comes in your way. Mm-hmm. And I remember during the run, it took me 5 hours to finish my first marathon. I didn't know how I was going to get to the finish line. I had no idea. I just knew I was going to get there. Even if I had to crawl on my floor, legs and I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And I did it. So it's really, you're fighting with your body, but you're also fighting with your brain. So that was definitely a moment where I saw that, wow, anything can be possible. And that kind of taught me that it's not only the knowledge you have, but it's also, you need to put in the action. And I feel like, as somebody who had 3 degrees, I always had a lot of knowledge, but I was afraid to do things that I may fail at. So because of that, I wasn't taking enough action.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and that's my new thing now. There's no excuses. We need to go out there, take action, and something will come out of it. Even if you fail, if you read about any successful person, I've really studied successful people, their story is full of failures. It's really full of failures. So everybody just sees the end result, right? But nobody ever talks about, every other failure that they had to go through until they reach that moment where it really changes their path. And for some people, it's many, many years that they try things, they start business that fail, do it again, and suddenly, because of all the experience that they've gained and the lessons, they were able to find the right way and make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Failure we are conditioned to believe that failure is a bad thing, but failure really, what is it? It's a chance, an opportunity to learn. And that's how we learn, by trial and error, by our failures. And it's really something that many people see it completely the wrong way. And by trying to avoid mistakes, we just hold ourselves back and we don't really venture to do what we might be able to do. Nico, let me ask you. So you say you lived in Greece until you were 17, and then you went to USA to study, and then you stayed there afterwards. So did you have plans to go and study and come back to Greece, or was it your plan to leave Greece?
Yes, that's a very good question. My plan was to go back to Greece.
Okay, what happened?
My extended family and my best friends are still in Greece.
Okay,
I speak to them all the time. They're probably my biggest supporters. They're the ones that, light me up, give me energy. So being far away from these people has been extremely hard. And it's been 22 years now. It's been extremely hard, but I've always chosen the difficult path. I always chosen the path that, and I don't know if I did that. I think I did that unconsciously, meaning that I didn't want to think that I failed on something by giving up on something, right? Mm-hmm. So, I always had the choice to go back and probably live a very comfortable life. But, and I always still struggle with that question, is it time to go back or not? But I'm like, nope, there's more to do. There's more to do. I can have more impact by making myself be better. And maybe even making more and giving back more. So it's definitely not something that I planned for, but it's because I feel like the way I set up my life over here, I can grow still much more and have a bigger impact.
Mm-hmm. I understand, and actually I can relate to that. But I lived in Greece for the biggest part of my life. It's only 10 years that I've moved to the UK, but I can see there are so many differences, and once you realize that where you are is where you can have the most growth and the most impact, as you say, then it really, the choice is very simple. There is no dilemma about it. Let's go back to what you were saying earlier about the difference between the traditional education and the self-education. So you have 3 degrees from the university, from the traditional education, which is an amazing feat to do, a master's degree as well, an MBA. But you say that it was not this education, it was the self-education that transformed your life. So you touched upon that earlier, but I want to ask you to expand on this.
Right. So let's take cost aside for a second, the cost of traditional education. Let's take that out of the equation. So what does traditional education provide, right? So it's probably a very good setting. Going to college is a very good setting to build up some skills, some good habits, right? So whether that's reading or research or problem solving, you can probably build that. And probably, get enough information, enough knowledge about an area that will probably, get you a job and maybe allow you to live comfortably in a career of that area. Now, this was before the Google days, right? Where knowledge was not so much available to the whole planet.
Yes.
And there wasn't, I don't know if you follow Kiyosaki at all, but I love what he says. He says there's better teachers on YouTube these days than in school. And in some ways, I kind of agree with that because, anybody now can go out and provide knowledge. And there's some, super amazing people that have excellent expertise that are sharing the knowledge now to the world, right? So the problem with me is that a lot of my professors were teaching about a topic that they didn't have any experience in. So, the people that I get my information now are people that have either excelled in this specific area, or at least they've tried something and maybe they failed and they can give me a lesson, or they've tried many times and they failed many times and then they succeeded. That's even better because they can tell me what didn't work and what did work, right? So I think that you'll get the best education from people that have actually, done what it is that they're teaching, right?
Yes.
Practitioners, actual practitioners that have the expertise. So that's one thing. Then when you put the cost, like the cost, especially in the US right now, is almost making it an investment that I question if it's even, valuable. Like, can you really go to get a degree and come out with 200,000-300,000 student loans and expect your career, expect your job to still be there 10, 20, 30 years later with everything that's happening right now, artificial intelligence and machine learning and technology is moving at rapid speed. So there's nothing that guarantees that you'll be able to pay up those student loans for whatever you studied without having to go back again to learn something else to get maybe a new job to pay off the initial debt.
And so to get a more debt while you do that as well.
So those are the major points that, I think, there's still some hope, but I think especially at universities, they really have to look at what's happening in the world. And they have to evaluate the curriculums. They have to evaluate who is the person, who are the people teaching, and what are the skills that we really want to be taught, right? Because learning something that you can find on Google by heart, I don't think is very valuable these days.
Absolutely, agree 100%, Nikos, and. The thing is that still that idea that the traditional education that go to school, go to university and get a job, it's still the norm in the society. It's getting less gradually, but still that is, considered to be the norm. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's going to take some time before that changes. But what I will tell you is that one, I've seen startup companies hire people. I'm sorry, not even startup companies, big companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook. They hire people with amazing salaries, over $100,000 a year, that have no traditional education. They have no degree. So if you can prove that you can code at a level that is acceptable for the job that you're applying for, you can get a job these days. On top of that, this morning, I read that the US government signed an executive order that allows people without degrees to enter the US government as civilian employees. This happened this morning. So basically, that's not a prerequisite anymore to even be qualified for a position. So the fact that the US government is doing it tells me that, it's moving faster than I would expect it to happen. So I think in the next few years, we will see it more and more, definitely in the US and I think internationally too.
Yeah, there's a big disruption indeed in the education, the way that it has been. And to be honest with you, it's about time as well, because the education had not evolved at the same pace as everything else in our society had evolved. It was kind of like 20th century. It had gone into the 21st century. Let me ask you also about the knowledge broker blueprint, the course by Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, which is actually where I met you from. So I want you to tell me how has it helped you personally? What has it offered you as a method and as a community, of course?
Yeah, that's where we met. I remember I reached out to you last summer, if you remember. I was in Greece vacationing and I saw a Greek in the community. And I was you were doing a mastermind at the time, and I was very interested to join your mastermind. But I think because of the time difference, it didn't work out. But it's definitely an amazing, I don't know, should I call it course? Should I call it a community? But it was the most expensive seminar the most expensive course that I had paid outside of traditional education, my first one. And I thought in the beginning that I was going to go in, get the knowledge quickly, and then 30 days later, I would probably cancel my subscription and get my money back. But very quickly, I found out that I wasn't going to do that. The information was very valuable, but more important for me was the people that I met and I'm still meeting through this community. It's really, similar-minded people, right? People with the same interests, people that really want to do more in life, people that want to have a bigger impact, people that are not selfish. Like, I really, really love the people in there. And it's amazing how people like that share knowledge, right? Like, I've met other people in my professional, times where they feel like if they share some knowledge, their job may be at risk. So sometimes people are afraid to do that. They're afraid to share some of the knowledge that led them to become better, right? Where I don't see that in this community. Like, the value that's being given is for free. It's unbelievable. And that's a community that I definitely want to be in.
What you said, it's about being reluctant to share the so-called secrets, of which I'm using air quotes because there is no such thing anymore. Success leaves clues. So if you don't want to disclose what you did to get successful, it's not going to benefit anyone. Certainly you're not going to benefit, or the other people won't benefit. So it kind of leads to a mindset of scarcity, of hoarding, because I made it, and if others make it, then I will not be successful. So it's completely wrong. And we were talking earlier before we started recording about the change, the shift we each had a few years back when our mindset shifted from that fixed mindset of this is who I am, this is what I do, to the growth mindset. So can you discuss a little bit about this, your thoughts on fixed versus growth mindset and your experience?
Right. So the concept between a fixed and a growth mindset is very nicely described in Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. I mean, that's a book that I recommend to everybody that I meet. So if somebody asks me, what is one book that I can read? I always tell them, go ahead and read Mindset. I think anybody can get value from this book, whether you're a parent, a teacher, someone in a relationship, you can apply that knowledge anywhere. And I think it's like mandatory reading. The reason is that I definitely had definitely had a fixed mindset in the past. And what that means is that you're kind of stuck to your core beliefs. And what I found is that some of these beliefs, we kind of, accept them without really challenging them, right? So what is a belief? A belief is a feeling of certainty that something is true, right? So how does that come about? Typically, you hear an idea many, many times in childhood, and you just make it a belief. You don't even question it because everybody around you, all your role models are telling you this. Your parents, your teachers, somebody that's older than you. So now that becomes a core belief. Well, that core belief may one day become a limiting belief because it doesn't apply to you, right? So that is really the basis of a fixed mindset. It's really like believing that, there's so much you can do, talent is given by birth. So if you don't have it, you can't do more than what you're doing. Um, some of the things I touched before, that some people are just lucky, wealthier, and that's why they're successful. And it doesn't allow you to like change beliefs. And I was a person that I always thought that people don't change, and I was really, really firm with that belief.
Mm-hmm.
And now I actually believe that people can change. Like even personalities can change. It's not easy, but it's doable, right? So going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset really, really changed my life to the positive, because it allowed me to even question my strongest beliefs, right? Something that is reality, is the truth. I still will question it, right? So if you come with an opposite idea, I'm now an active listener. I'm listening to what you're telling me, because I'm saying to myself, I don't know that I'm right. First of all, there's no right or wrong, but what I think is so right and so true, it's because somebody kind of engraved that in my mind when I was really, really young. So let me see if I'm open to changing that. And that can really change your life. That can enhance, your career, your relationships, everything, if you're open to that.
Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts on perfectionism, which is something that, rather than many people think that it's something that is very good to aim for, but I think and believe you agree that it actually is the opposite. It holds us back rather than. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's very funny that you mentioned that, because I've been a big perfectionist my whole life.
Me too.
You too? Okay. And the more I speak to people about it, the more I find that it is a bigger personality trait than I thought. So there's more and more people that are perfectionists than I ever thought. And sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. I'm an empath, so I typically feel people, so I can sense, if they may be. But yeah. So what is perfectionism, right? Even the definition of perfectionism is not 100% understood by people. So I've really done a lot of studying and researching about perfectionism to help myself first, and then to help others. So a perfectionist really wants to perfect their imperfect self, right? So from the outside, it's seeing that you want to have everything else perfect around you, like maybe have a beautiful environment around you, like an office space or a house, or have a beautiful car. But in reality, you're doing all this because you don't feel enough, right? So you're doing all this to kind of perfect yourself. And that could be a very, very disastrous formula that can lead to very, bad things. So yeah, I've struggled with this my whole life. It's something that, I think perfection itself is not a problem. It is a symptom to a deeper problem. And it's a problem that it's a fear that everybody has, but some people can handle it better than others. And it's the fear of judgment and criticism. So if that fear becomes too big and you're dreading the judgment or criticism of others, that can make you turn into a perfectionist. So in my mind, perfectionist is a secondary problem to a bigger issue, right? So I always like to find the root cause. I'm an engineer, so I always like to find the root cause of a problem. And I think if anybody's struggling with perfectionism, they should see if that may be the cause of it. And then it can help them really attack the cause and then take care of perfectionism as a secondary symptom.
That's great. Very, very nicely described, Nico. Thank you for that. Let's talk about something different. And my next question would be about entrepreneurial mindset and its characteristics. And so obviously you've had different positions and careers in the past, but you are now an entrepreneur. So I want to ask, what do you think differentiates the mindset compared to one of someone who works for others or is an employee? And do you think that is something that anyone can cultivate, or is it something that it's only for few?
Right. So I think your question goes back to the question with traditional education. I think if you are a good student in a traditional education, you will come out to be a good employee. if you're a great student, if you're an A student, and I was a 4.0 student, which in America means you have like full A's. So both of my masters I got with a 4.0 degree. So that turned me into an amazing employee, but not an entrepreneur. So the difference is that you need to embrace failure to become an entrepreneur, right? Because if you really know the answers to what you're trying to do and you know the outcome, I don't think that's really entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is when you know, you're going into an area that you don't know what's going to come out of it. So I was not trained through my traditional education to do that. And as a perfectionist, it makes it even worse because you don't want to fail in anything, right? So you have to be open to failure to become an entrepreneur. You have to be able to put yourself out there and not quit when things don't go your way. So I'm trying a few different things right now. And I've been an investor for a few years, like you mentioned, but I'm also an entrepreneur in a few things, and it's kind of exciting to let go of the expectation of winning and of succeeding, and just like enjoying the journey. And if it happens to work out, that's even better. But the fact that you don't expect it to work out and you're not putting like all your, because that, it adds another level of stress and anxiety if you're focusing so much to survive from this thing you're trying to do. Like it kind of takes the focus away from where it should be, right? So yeah, I mean, I think anybody can do it. I really think so. It's just like, again, it's cultivating it's basically building the mental and emotional muscle. It's almost like I said before about running the marathon. As much as I was in excruciating pain, like my body was in pain that I cannot describe, especially the last 4 miles. I think I was struggling more with my mind than with my body. The mind is telling you, stop, you did enough, it's okay, all these things to try to like convince you that you don't have to go through it. So you have to it's a muscle. It's a mental muscle that you have to train in order to be able to become stronger there and then handle future failures and future struggles. So anybody can do it. It's just the question. The question really is, how much do you really want it? And are you willing to go through that process?
That's great. Thank you. Two things with what you said. One, I really liked what you said, to let go of the expectation and enjoy the journey. And actually, because you mentioned Kiyosaki earlier, just the other day I found a quote by Kiyosaki, which I've put on my desktop, and it's very relevant to this. So I'm just going to read it back to you. So he said, keep using your brain, work for free. Soon your mind will show you ways of making money far beyond what someone could pay you. You will see things that other people never see. Most people never see these opportunities because they are looking for money and security. So that's all they get.
I love it. Love it.
I was very impressed with that because, Kiyosaki, from the moment I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which you talked about Carol Dweck's book earlier, that you believe it should be mandatory. I think also Rich Dad, Poor Dad should be on that list of mandatory books to read.
I agree. That's a very, very simple book for anybody that wants to get more knowledge with financial literacy. Very simple book, and it's stuff that you read it and you're like, wow, nobody ever told me this thing. Why do I not know this? I came out with an MBA, and I tell people I didn't know how to manage my money and multiply my money. I had to find that out by myself, which is kind of an MBA. You would think like it opens the door to executive positions in companies, and you have to understand money, but they don't teach you these things. I'm like, how is this possible, right? So Kiyosaki does a great job at explaining, what people need to do, and anybody. I think if you want to talk about financial independence, I think that should be a goal that everybody should strive for. Like, there's really no reason why people shouldn't do that, and anybody can accomplish it. I think within 20 years, anybody can be financially independent if they have the right habits and understand, what it takes to do so, right? Going back to traditional education and having a job and a career, I question if people can, live comfortably in retirement under this model anymore, right? The national debt in America and across the world in different countries is sky high, right? Somebody has to pay for this. And you're seeing what's happening with different things like now, the virus across the planet. If you're relying on only one source of income and somebody can stop that source that's out of your control, then what do you do then? Right? So, and then somebody may say, well, okay, well, this happens once every 100 years. But it's not about that. It's about the fact that when you do have financial independence, then you can decide what you want to do to live more authentically and have a better impact to the world. I'm not saying don't do what you love, right? If you're a doctor, a dentist, or an engineer, you can still keep on doing that. But you can choose how many hours you want to work. You can choose where you want to work. You can choose how do you want to work. Do you want to work for somebody else, or do you want to, have a YouTube channel and teach something else to people? So it goes back to, some of the things and some of the beliefs that we have gained from a young age, which are limiting to us. And, one thing is that money is bad, or successful people are not happy, right? So it creates this mindset that don't go after that because it's not going to lead to happiness. Whereas, being a good student across every single subject, like being an A student in everything, and then coming out of school, getting a job, a good steady job, and then buying a house, getting married. Okay, I question, does that lead to happiness for everybody? And how do you do that? How do you choose, what is the right career? At the age of 18, we're asking these children to take $100, $200, $300,000 loan, right? Are they in a position to take that kind of debt? Like, do they know that this is really what they want? And then you come out of this, do you know how to manage your emotions, how to form good relationships? Like, these are very basic stuff that is lacking from traditional education.
Yeah, it is. It's in the end, I agree with what you said. It's about choice of how you're going to live your life rather than being forced to do some things because you need to have the income for your survival, for your family, and for all these things. Tell me about investing. So you invest in stocks, crypto, real estate, Airbnb, startup companies, all these different asset classes. So when did you start, and why so many different assets? Is it
right? So I think my first investment was stocks. So I started trading stocks, not investing. I was a trader, and I'll tell you the difference in a second. When I was, I think, around 2002, so a long time ago. And of course, I didn't know what I was doing. I was doing it by myself. Very little money that I could afford to trade, but like everybody else, we're looking for something that can give us quick money, right? So I thought that I could find the right stock, sell it, and make a lot of money. And I did that for a few years. And of course, I was never really successful at doing that. And then I was reading all kinds of books because I really enjoy entrepreneurship. I really enjoy, the process of making money and then, determining what you're going to do with it. So my education helped me. And then the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book actually taught me something that I happened to do by accident. So I own my own 2-bedroom apartment in the United States, and I happened to rent it out. So initially my house was a liability when I was in it, and then it became an asset once I moved out and I started to make money out of it, right? Because and that was really eye-opening for me, because something that I thought was mine, and I had this mindset of, I will pay off my loan sooner, and instead of 30 years, I will pay it off in 20 years, and then, or maybe 25 years, and then have this big asset, and I'm gonna have a lot of money because the house is going to be paid off. It's going to be worth more. But really, when you live in your house, it's a liability because you never stop spending money, and it doesn't produce money. Like people, when people understand that you need to use your money as a way to create more money, that's when everything changes, right? So money in the bank is useless. The bank, as soon as you give it your money, it will take it out, turn it into digits, and then give it 9 times to other people. That's what they're allowed to do. Mm-hmm. So why am I giving my money and then the bank gives it out? I would have to question myself. Now, that being said, you definitely need a small security amount. You definitely need 3 to 6 months in cash in order to pay your bills in case whatever happens and you can't afford to pay your bills. But I think that for me, the mindset that, have my money work for me and put it in ways where it can make money has mm-hmm. really changed my mind. And that's why I'm looking at always opportunities to do that, right? So some of the things you mentioned are a little bit of a gamble. So crypto is still, in my mind, a little bit of a gamble because there's nothing really there to prove that, it will go up or not. So I'm just playing around with that. But the other assets I treat very, very seriously. And when you reach an amount, you don't want to, if you're starting it from the beginning, you may want to go all into one area, like study the area, understand it, whether it's real estate or whether it's a stock market. You can make money from anywhere. You just have to understand it, like study enough. And there's very good information out there that you can get. But at some point, you'll see that it's harder to put all your eggs in one basket, because then there's a high risk of losing that. And that is why I'm diversifying. So yes, the return may be smaller, but it's safer because not everything can go down at the same time. Mm-hmm. So for example, the stock market may crash, but I still have my tenants inside and they're still giving me my rent. Or people are still vacationing and I'm still collecting money from the Airbnbs.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. One more I wanted to ask you, going back to the personal development, how has Tony Robbins influenced your journey in personal development?
Yeah,
I can see you smiling. Yes,
smiling because I think it's impossible to not mention Tony Robbins in a conversation with self-development. And I think the more I study this person, I've studied him for many years before I even attended my first event with him, UPW last year. Mm-hmm. The more I think that this guy is truly amazing. Like I don't think anybody in this area has changed more lives than Tony Robbins has. So he's a person that really gave answers to some of my biggest problems, right? Mm-hmm. So what is a problem? Like he says, a problem is an unanswered question, right? So for people listening out there, no matter what problem you may think you have, there's always a solution out there. You just have to go out and find it, right? I think 99.99% of the problems, somebody else has experienced them, so there is an answer out there. Mm-hmm. So one of the best things you can do is go out there and reach out for answers. And for me, Tony Robbins really gave me answers, and everything he said really resonated with me. And, UPW, again, I think that should be like mandatory education. It talks to you about stuff, how to manage your emotions, how to strengthen your body, how to guard your mind from negativity. It's really stuff that if you really pay attention and you practice these things, they work. It's not just, like motivation that doesn't go anywhere. But you have to do it, right? So read 30 minutes a day. I mean, I used to be somebody that loved watching the TV. I would have the TV open all day long as background noise.
Yeah.
And it was usually CNN. I loved listening to the news. And now I know why. It's because it's stimulating, right? Yes. It's like all these things are happening, so it stimulates you. But it's mostly negative. And these things go in your mind, and it affects your performance, it affects your mood, it affects your state. So I'm happy to say that I haven't watched the news for over 2 years now. And that's another factor that has extremely changed my life, because I'm not so much manipulated and affected as what I think most of the people are. And it's very unfortunate that that's the case, but I think it's a fact. The media can really manipulate things and make things seem bigger or worse than they are, because that's how they get you to watch the news, right? There's a monetary reason behind that. They make money out of that. So, once you start reading and you're more open to other sources that you need to like, find them maybe on YouTube, or then you get the other point of view. So at least you have another point of view. Then you can decide what makes sense, right? And then you can balance things and say, okay, the truth is somewhere in the middle. So it's not as tragic as people make it sound, because it will limit your life if you allow this fear to take over. And during these times, what I tell people is that the best thing that you can do is to, work on things that you can control, right? So, what can you do? And there's always something that you can do. Like for some people, this whole coronavirus situation has been a blessing. Like they had to sit down and reevaluate everything about their life. They may have lost their job. They may have lost a good amount of money from their investments. They may have lost a loved one. Like all these bad things happen at the same time. And in a way, you can turn that into something extremely positive for the rest of your life, because it forces you to really sit down and think, okay, this is how life is. There's so much really that we have in control, no matter what we think, right? And back to the perfectionist thing, perfectionists want to have control of things. And that's an illusion. There is no control.
Yeah.
The only control we have is our thoughts and our actions, right? So why don't we aim to be stronger mentally, emotionally, and physically, and let just life play out?
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nico. That's a great answer. Let me ask you some quick fire questions as well. The one that I always start with, you've already answered. What does personal development mean to you? I remember you started talking about that at the very beginning. So my next one, the next quick fire is, let's say you could go back in time and meet your 20-year-old self. What's the one piece of advice you would give him?
I love that question. I would tell him to be very careful whose advice I follow. And I'll spend a minute explaining what I mean by that. Everybody is willing to give you their advice. And by all means, that doesn't mean that you should be disrespectful and not accept it. You should listen to everybody's advice. But I think you should be very careful to whose advice you follow, because there's nothing wrong. There's nothing worse than bad advice. And unfortunately, we all have different role models as we grow up, and it's typically the people in our circle, right? So if you don't have the right people in your circle, you may be getting advice from people that have not, even tried to do what they're giving you advice on. So in my mind, they're not qualified to give you that advice. Now, they may have amazing intentions. It's because they love you. It's because, they care about you. But if they haven't built that mental muscle that I talked about, then they may be projecting their fear and their insecurities on you, and they may be stopping you from doing what you want, right? So just be very careful whose advice you listen to.
Sure. Talking about advice, then, what's the worst piece of advice that you hear being dispensed in the world around you or today?
Oh, I think there's so much. Don't make mistakes. Don't stand out. Money is evil. Successful people are unhappy. Seek work and life balance. Don't complain you have more than other people. Like, why would we need to compare ourselves to somebody that doesn't have, like somebody who's unfortunate, and not somebody who has done more in life?
Yeah.
Like, why are we telling children, you should finish your food because somebody in Africa doesn't have food on their plate? I mean, I don't understand the point of that. Why not do more in life, get more in life, and then go out and help those people in Africa? Like, why don't they tell us that? Like, that is my message to people. Awesome. Do more, be your best self. Don't be afraid to make more money, and then use that to have an impact in the world. That's the best thing that we can do.
Sure. Fantastic. Nikos, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it and change something in the world as it is today, what would you change?
Awareness. I would hope that people would be more self-aware.
That's great. Is there any major aha moment you've had in your life the last maybe a year or so that you wanted to share with us?
In the last year or so, let me think. So I started my high performance coaching and business, and it's like you don't know how it's going to come out, like how it's going to work out until you start taking action and changing maybe your methodology or your strategy. As long as your goal stays the same, what I found is that in the beginning you're starting like, okay, there's no way I'm going to make this happen, or who am I to be doing this, or do I need to go out and get a coaching certification? You question yourself, right? And then it's like the life of an entrepreneur. If you saw that chart, you go from super happy to like super miserable. I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm the best person in the world, I'm the smartest, and it goes down again. So it's up and down, up and down. So I think, my aha moment was when, I've experienced a couple of failures in my journey. For example, my coaching business, and some setbacks, and then not letting those allow me to stop and continue to push forward showed that I made then leaps, and that was an aha moment. Like that is really true. It is true when they say that you have to go through some failures to kind of like reassess what you're doing, change path a little bit. As long as the goal stays the same and you really, really want it, you will hit it. So a small aha moment that happened recently in the last year.
That's great. Nico, I know we've talked about all sorts of different things, a vast range of topics. Is there anything you were hoping I would ask you today and completely missed it?
I don't think so. I think you did a great job covering all kinds of different areas that I'm interested in and I'm passionate about. Like Tony says, life is about growing and giving. And I think that is something that I really go by. So I was a person, and people can look up about the 6 universal needs, human needs that Tony Robbins talks about. But when I did that exercise, I found that certainty and significance were the top 2 needs that I try to satisfy in the past. So everything I was doing was to feel certain, and also to feel significant. And that does not lead to a path of happiness, right? When you change that with love and growth, then you can have a very, very fulfilling life. And I think, looking at the statistics, especially in the United States, there's a huge amount of people that are very, very unhappy. And my passion is to change that. And it comes down to understanding what drives our behaviors. What are the needs that drive our behaviors? And when you sit down and think about that, you'll see that there's many other healthier ways, that you can follow to satisfy those needs and make your life more pleasant. Life should not be about, like I said, the end result, the expectations, but the journey. So there's easy ways for even the biggest perfectionists like me to change and find the way to enjoy the journey more.
That's brilliant. Fantastic. How can people connect with you and find out more about you, Nico?
Best way, if you want to follow my content on Facebook, at Performance Coach Nico. So facebook.com/Performance Coach Nico. And then maybe we can put my email address or a link to that here with the podcast.
I'll put it on the show notes. Yes, sure. I want to thank you very much for our conversation today. You told me earlier, and you don't mind if I disclose, you said that this is your first podcast interview. I want to thank you for this. I think it was an exceptionally good one, and I think you should do more of this. You're very passionate and authentic in your message, and that should be shared. So I'm glad I did my part in that. So thank you very much. Any last parting words?
Just thank you for inviting me. It is my first one. You're right. And I am passionate as well. You're right about that as well. But again, thank you very much for inviting me. Hopefully this is enjoyable and valuable to your audience. And best of luck to you too.
Thank you very much, Nico. All the best. Thank you very much for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts. If you want to know more about me and how I can help you, join my Facebook group, Personal Development Mastery. The link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.